Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wyndham-Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. Today is Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. The time is 6:30 and we're meeting in the Wyndham High School auditorium. May I have a roll call, please?
Thanks. Kate Bricks. Here. Jessica Bridges. Jenny Butler. Here. Jody Carroll. Here. Caitlin Downs.
Here.
Marge Gavoni.
Here.
Shar Jewell.
Here.
Mike McClellan.
Here.
Christina Small.
Here.
Lillian Nugent.
Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Howe, are there any adjustments to the agenda? No adjustments. Okay, before we move into public input, just go over the guidelines as I always do. The purpose of public comment is to provide an opportunity to address the board on matters specific to our schools and educational matters. All other comments beyond that scope are not appropriate for this meeting. The board will listen carefully to all members of the public but will not respond. Speakers are expected to follow rules of common decency and decorum. Interrupting any speaker or board member during commentary is also not allowed. We ask that all speakers address the board and not the audience. Each person will be permitted to address the board one time during public comment with a maximum speaking time of 3 minutes. Sharing time with another speaker is not permitted. I will alert the speaker at the 3-minute mark. If speakers do not complete their comments within the allotted 3 minutes, they may submit a written statement to the board. Written statements are also accepted from those who do not wish to speak publicly. Requests for information or concerns that require further research will be noted and referred to the superintendent for further action if necessary. Discussion of matters involving individual students is not permitted during public comment due to the privacy, confidentiality, and due process rights of the RSU 14 students. Comments regarding any individual staff member, either by name or specifically identifiable by position, are not permitted. If the comment continues, the mic will be turned off. Complaints about any district employee should follow the process outlined in Policy KEB, public complaints about school personnel, and are not permitted during public comment. We ask that adults share their first and last name and the town that they reside in. Students are only required to share their first names. Thank you for joining us this evening. We look forward to hearing from you. Who would like to speak?
Good evening. Grace Levitt, a resident of Raymond. As some of you know, I currently serve as president of the Maine Education Association. I'm incredibly proud of our educators in our state and very grateful for the great work they do each day. I'm also the grandmother of a new kindergartner, and I'm a little remiss to not get here until October. I don't know where September went, but I did want you all to know the incredible joy that I get to witness when I'm a little bit late leaving for work in the morning and I get to see my granddaughter waiting for the bus. She's just ecstatic each and every morning. She loves school. She's had a fantastic start to all of this. The programs prior to the starter school were wonderful, getting familiar with buses and teachers and the building. And I just wanted you to know that she's an incredibly joyful child, and the joy is something that just lifts me every morning. And I'm getting tearful just thinking about it. And I'm going to show her the photos I have of her when she's a senior, just in case this doesn't continue for 13 years, but I suspect it will. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you to the educators and everybody in the district. I'm extremely grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Rebecca Cole, Wyndham. I'm also a first grade teacher at Wyndham Primary School and president of Sebago East Shore EA, as well as Maine's NEA director. I wanted to extend appreciation through the chair to Director Gavoni and Director Bridges for their visit to our school the other day. The children loved having them. They, in fact, insisted that they stay for our story. I think Ms. Gavoni thought she had to read the story. But the kids really enjoyed having it and wanted to know when they were going to come back. I also wanted to thank publicly Just for Kids Pediatric Dentistry. They through an opportunity at their facility, provided my classroom with a huge collection of supplies, which we all really appreciate. And just in general, the support from the community as we've started the school year. I've had former parents reach out and say that they hope that the school year was off to a great start. Kids stopping by. It's been a really joyful opening. So thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Kristen Day from Wyndham. I recently met with Principal Ryan Caron and Librarian Kristen Freeling regarding my citizen challenge of a book in the high school, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I appreciated the cooperative tone of the meeting, but we remain at an impasse as the library will continue to provide as much information that's legally available by Maine state law, which makes an exception for obscenity for educational purposes. That exception is being exploited. Policy is currently written that the whole book must be considered, and content read out of context is immaterial. Since we all know that students don't always read the whole book, I press on, and the challenge moves to the next level, which will be the challenge form and a review committee, which I hope this time is chosen fairly. Some books I'm challenging this fall are fantasy genre, so cultural value won't be a primary factor, and they contain heterosexual pornographic content that does not need to be available to minor students in school for educational purpose. I'm seeking meaningful solutions that respect the rights of all parents in RSU 14. Any real conversation our community is interested in seeing on this topic will have to start with a change in school board membership. While I respect all members for their service, and I respect most for professionalism, this current board majority accepts this new normal that pornographic content is not a risk to minor children, and that it's acceptable to provide it to them at school. This board has been unwilling to acknowledge that not all library content is safe for all students, and that current policy leaves materials in place that can harm children. This is where compromise will have to begin, as the current system is not sustainable. There's no issue more important than this one that sets policy of what is safe for our students when they leave our homes and go to school. Districts have complete local control to determine what is in the library collections and how they're managed to keep all students safe. This board majority has neglected that responsibility by disregarding all valid evidence and arguments and pleas by community members on behalf of their children. Others have stated that they don't want their taxpayer dollars spent on school materials of pornographic content. The board allowed public input but did not budge one iota, and their revised draft of IJJ is not materially different. So here we are again, because the ethical conundrum remains. Just because it's legal doesn't make it right for all students or all families. Fortunately, Bonne Eagle High School, for one, has moved the needle in the statewide conversation, as more reasonable thinking has prevailed there than here in RSU 14. It's time for RSU 14 to open this conversation to come to solutions that are right for us beyond the current all or nothing we-they tone to how can we provide a meaningful solution for our community that takes care of all our kids' needs. The book challenge process was not designed for this kind of burden, and it will take new ideas to adjust. I thank Marge and Kate for their service, but I'll be voting for Don Miller and Justin Wynot for school board for compromise and the success of all children equally in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
Good evening, board. Louis Willett, Wyndham. Thought we were past book challenges, but here we go again. Without reading into the book, I would imagine that the school librarian and the principal have done their due diligence and reviewed the material thus far. This is another case in point, as we saw in the spring, of a vocal minority attempting to dictate the choices presented to other parents. Now, most of these parents claim for parents' rights, but they are seeking to strip parents' rights away. So that's why in a few weeks here, I'm going to support Marge and Joe for their seats. And I wish Kate and who else was leaving? I forget. Thank you guys for your service, and I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, school board. My name is Stephen Napolitano. I live in Wyndham. I noticed the stairs are back. So, see those moved prior, and now they're back. It's kind of antagonizing parents. So, just want to point that out. The FDA recently has said that there is treatment for COVID-19, ivermectin being one of them. I personally took ivermectin during that time. I was back up and running in a few days. It was amazing. It was probably one of the worst illnesses I've ever had. So I'm glad to see the FDA actually took that stand. I hope the school board uses that information when it comes to making any future decisions, if anything were to happen again, like previously. I don't want to see any of us go through that. One of those examples is mandating masks to children, where many of the community members didn't have to, adults didn't have to wear a mask, but kids were forced to. And I think 4 of you were not part of that, so I think Jody, Shar, Mike, and Caitlin were not there to mandate masks. The rest of you were responsible for doing that, even though the masks did not stop coronavirus. I believe there was a notice that was sent out by the school that getting the vaccine shot was also going to prevent the coronavirus, and that's a shame. We did speak up. The school went forward with that notice without an apology. The information's out there, guys. We actually knew that before, but some of you, unfortunately, it appears that you're making decisions based on the fear sold by the news and the case count. And we need people that are going to make decisions for our children, to put our children's best interests at heart. And at times that means letting the parents make the choices for them. If a parent wants to have their kid wear a mask, that's great. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But mandating that for everybody, I totally disagree with. So if that were to come up again, I really hope that you make the sound decision. So when on the box it says it won't stop a virus, they really mean that. It won't stop a virus. So, I've heard Jenny say she follows the science. She said that recently at a town council meeting. Unfortunately, I think she means political science. So I can't support 2 of the candidates that are running for school board, but I will support Justin Wynot and Don Miller, because I can trust that they will put our kids' interests first. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who else?
Good evening, members. April O'Shea, Wyndham. Happy Banned Book Week. As stated, I would not be supporting candidates who would support Moms for Liberty, which is a group that seeks to ban books. I just don't think it's very American. I'm all for compromise and some sort of, you could tell I haven't prepared tonight, but I just cannot support people who just want to ban books for their own ideology and not consider what other parents want to do with their children. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I missed the podium. Ken Clark, Wyndham, and I do want to go back to the challenge when we had genderqueer. Again, I was very dismayed at the biased board that was picked. It's quite obvious who they chose and who they didn't choose and what the direction was from the get-go. For them to determine how a book impacts an individual at a certain age is impossible. We all know, if you understand literature, that books impact kids differently, and it should be up to the parents to decide what books they're read, especially when it comes to controversial books. So again, I'm going to hold this up because these are images within genderqueer, okay? I won't describe it because it's probably, they'll shut me off. Thank God these are blacked out. But this is a fact that a child's brain is not developed enough to understand the repercussions of their actions. Why then do we encourage them to engage in sexual acts with multiple people while driving a car, using the steering wheel to masturbate, drinking, drugs, etc.? Why is this other picture, or both these pictures, why is it illegal everywhere except in the school to show this to children? Can you please think about that? Because it's harmful. This is straight up pedophilia. okay? It's an older gentleman with a beard rubbing penises with a younger kid. This is in genderqueer that you guys think is acceptable. How is beyond comprehension? It's disgusting. At the end of genderqueer is a link to kink.com. Kink.com is Kink.com Countries is a successful fetish porn company. They also have 10 S&M and bondage-themed websites. The sites are updated weekly with the new half-hour and hour video segments. Isn't that great? This means hundreds of new kids are making new videos weekly. This is child trafficking. Why is RSU purchasing books from an organization that supports child trafficking? Seriously, this is sick. Here's another book. Again, a gentleman masturbating, two boys, what's it say? This would involve hip thrusting while thinking of my latest gay ship. I don't know what a gay ship is. I don't want to know. Again, I'm going to go back to one of the examples in it, genderqueer, is they talk about how you can masturbate while you're driving a car using the steering wheel to get yourself off. That to me would be dangerous. I don't think the police department would want that. I don't think they teach that in driver's ed. So if that endangers others, which it does, that could take the life of an innocent person, because it's a little bit even more distracting than texting while driving, I would think. And so why are you guys promoting it? Why are you showing kids that this is okay? Because that's what it does. You influence kids. Last one, this is a sex toy. Oh, joy, sex toy. This is great. I won't read it. But again, how about a game like chess, Monopoly, a soccer ball, Legos, a microscope, a bike, a Rubik's Cube, an instruction puzzle, a doll, hopefully with not holes in it? Why can't we do these things for our kids instead of this crap?
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you for letting my kid have access to this.
Anyone else? I don't see anyone standing up. So I will close public comment. I'm going to move into item number 6, student superintendent's report. Oh, you need this.
Sorry, we're lacking microphones on this end of the table this morning. Just want to echo some of the comments that actually were said about being a great start to the school year, including a great start with homecoming week and a volleyball game that's going on across the hall. It's actually been a great week, and probably Lillian, I don't want to steal her thunder about all that's been going on this week with homecoming. Had a chance today to have lunch over in the high school, and today was Breast Cancer Awareness Day, and it was absolutely inspiring to see the sea of pink throughout Windham High School, and to see the number of kids that have been involved with Spirit Week. And had a chance to sit down and talk a little bit with Pete Small, who the kids had talked to him about. One side of his head was pink, the other side was purple, for one recognizing breast cancer, the other recognizing sarcoma, and just not only the activity and our students being involved with this, but also our staff. It's been a good start, and it's also just been a lot of fun to see homecoming, and I'm sure Lillian's going to share a little bit more. This is a busy month for outreach, for moving up towards the referendum for our school project. And the board tonight, you're going to have an opportunity to officially call the election, and to also hold a public forum on October 18th to answer any questions that the public may have about the referendum. In addition to that, tomorrow night, October 5th, 6 o'clock, there'll be a half-hour Zoom on financing, cost of the school, possible tax impact, and I have some updated numbers that I'll share tomorrow night. Next Thursday night, Michelle Brand, Greg Applestein, and AJ Ruth will be doing a session on programming and how that will impact, how the new building will impact students. And on October 19th at 6 o'clock, we're going to be doing a Zoom in which we're going to be covering the performing arts, athletics, and then also student activities and how those will be supported throughout the building. This past week, and I don't remember what night it was, had a chance, I think it was last Tuesday night, had a chance to join the Windham Town Council and do an update for them, talking about the project, talking about impact. On Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday, I will be with the Raymond Select Board, and opportunity to go through the board, give a history of the project, have a chance to meet with the interim town manager next Wednesday morning at 9 in Raymond to have a chance to sit down with Sue Look and talk to the project and give her an update. So a lot of things are moving forward with that project, a lot of engagement activities that are planned, and just thankful for all the volunteers who've been helping out with that. Also, I know we've got a busy agenda tonight. Just wanted to give a big thank you to the Windham Police Department. We're going to have some members from the department who will be also here tonight for the safety presentation. The partnership with the Windham Police Department, I am more than thankful for how supportive they are. Also for the Sheriff's Department in Raymond, for how supportive they are to our schools up in Raymond. It is wonderful to be in a spot where you can reach out to either entity and get the support that you need. Lastly, just a reminder to students and families that Friday is a workshop day, and all of our teachers are going to be participating in workshops across the district. This is our first workshop day that we have, and it's since the start of school, and so it's a chance to get caught up and do some trainings, and I look forward to being able to visit with the district. Also, a big thank you to Christine Hessler and Christine Frostburton-Nay and Shonda Turner from SAD 15. They have been working together on a combined professional development day across all the Greater Sebago Alliance for some of our singleton positions, so things like art teachers, music teachers, positions that there's typically one person in a building, and so they'll have a chance to go through and connect across districts. And we will be hosting here in the high school auditorium a lot of Maine chorus teachers, and the chamber singers will be singing as well. They have a special day planned with a keynote speaker, so a lot of things are going to be happening on that day. But again, just a big thank you to Christine and Shonda, who has students here in the district, but just the amount of work that they've done to prep that day.
Thank you. Just to follow up, how would the public access the Zoom link for?
Sure. So the public can access the Zoom link. It was set out on a parent square. It's also out on the community page. It's a Zoom link. That Zoom link will be used for all 3 meetings. So once you have that Zoom link, go ahead and bookmark it, and we'll go ahead and run those nights. We'll send out a reminder again tomorrow, and we look forward to anyone who has any questions about finance and how this might impact taxes in both Windham and Raymond for the upcoming years.
Thank you. Next up, board roundtable. Marge.
Yes, I have a few things I'd like to bring up for consideration of the board for future agendas. One of them is special ed. There's been quite a few comments I've seen and heard that a lot of parents are concerned due to the fact we know there is staff shortage, and I think the fear is that their children's IEPs could not be implemented fully. So if we could get an update on that at some point in time, so for us and for the public. The other thing is if we could also, there is a lot of talk going around about social emotional learning. I think to have that on the agenda where I think it's good training and acknowledgement for the board and for the public to really understand what is social emotional learning and how is it applied in each one of the schools as far as grades go. And the third thing I had to be considered, because we have programs in our schools that the only people, a lot of people know about it are the ones who have students that are in it, such as Bridges, ACES, the Altitude program, the Katahdin program. So if we could somehow get that on the agenda so that everybody on the board and everybody in the public could understand, and we probably have more than that one, but those are the 4 that come to mind. So in the future, if we could have something on that, I think that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So being the beginning of the school year, our worst subject is bullying, and I just wanted to remind people that as advocates for children, we need to recognize that thorough and efficient education is our primary responsibility. To this end, we need to consider the proper and adequate support of schools to be a civic responsibility shared by all citizens. Promoting ethical and responsible behavior is essential. We need to recognize that ethics, constructive attitudes, responsible behavior, and character are important if a student is to leave as a responsible and involved citizen. Bullying means intentional behavior that a reasonable person would expect to interfere with work performance or everyday life. Generally, bullying will involve repeated conduct. However, a single incident of conduct could constitute bullying. This includes, but is not limited to, teachers, administrators, and students, as well as parents, community members, and others involved with the schools are prohibited from engaging in bullying and behaviors such as humiliating, mocking, name-calling, insulting, cyberbullying, etc. Let's show our children that we are committed to providing a respectful, safe, and inclusive place for everyone that is free from bullying conduct. And those all come from the policies in the A group.
Thank you.
Chris, can you just provide a quick recap on conversations you've been having with transportation on school bus safety and what you guys have been thinking about and looking at to increase school bus safety, please?
Yeah, so a couple things that have happened and have actually been quite public, and it hasn't just been with RC14, but a number of distracted drivers that are out there who seem to ignore a 60-foot yellow object that has bright flashing lights that is pretty visible both morning, afternoon, evening, and we definitely have seen an increase. And actually there was a story covered in WGME, I think it was about a week and a half ago, with I think it was 5 separate school bus incidents, crashes across the state of Maine, all within a week period, one of which being in Raymond, where somebody ran into our extended stop arm on Route 302, in which, Shar, you actually had a chance to go ahead and witness that. So Aaron and Sharon have number one, have brought the drivers back in and have been working on some training as far as safely crossing students and making sure that traffic is coming to a complete halt before that happens. And also bus drivers reminding students that they should be waiting for the bus to call them across the street when that comes. We have 2 new buses that came in within the past week or so. Those are the ones that were approved in the budget. Those are our first buses that actually have rear-facing cameras, and we're going to be piloting those to see what impact that those might be, to see if we want to add those to the rest of the fleet in order to be able to make sure that we're properly capturing, what's the word I'm looking for, license plates. Also, just a reminder for the public is that all of our buses have a camera on the stop arm or adjacent to the stop arm, and we're able to pick up plates, and what the bus driver actually has to do is just capture the time. They don't actually have to capture anything. It's just a little easier when they go back to in the videos. Aaron shared with me last week when he was driving, he had someone in a F-150 who just totally ignored the sign, was able to do that. Somebody from Wyndham Police Department came down, grabbed the tape, and we'll go through proper prosecution of that particular thing. But the biggest thing that we're doing is looking to control what it is we can control, which is our drivers and how they actually stop, how they motion students, creating that awareness. I wish that I could control the behavior of other drivers on the road, especially, again, National School Bus Yellow, a 60-foot object with all, and we keep adding more and more lights. In fact, we've got some buses coming in that even have greater strobes on the stop signs. But again, looking at ways that we can work with our drivers to make sure that they are properly crossing students and that they're not bringing students on their bus until they have an opportunity to make sure traffic is safe. The other thing we're doing is we're reevaluating runs that had any students crossing to look at doorside pickups and ways that we can eliminate. But even the situation we ran into last year with Raymond, with even a doorside pickup and a vehicle going completely around the bus. So disappointed with some of the drivers that are out there, our students in the morning and our students in the afternoon. Our bus drivers are doing their absolute best, but we want to make sure that we keep them safe and get them here to school.
I was driving here tonight. I got here a little bit early, and my wife and I were talking on the phone. I was sitting in the car, and she, because of the agenda tonight, she reminded me, hey, you're not the representative from Raymond. You are the representative for the kids of the school district. So I'm going to make my comments on that. I missed the school book issues that you guys went through last year, the end of last year. I wasn't here for that. And at the end of my term last time, I kind of avoided the books. I did not want to look at I wasn't caused to look at genderqueer. I was in Wyndham, the bookstore one day, and it was right front and center. I thought, I should look, and I didn't look. But recently, a U.S. Senator, last week, there was a hearing, and I'm guessing it was on pornography and book issues, I guess, but there was a U.S. Senator, and I saw one of the pictures. I really pretty surprised what it said, that it would be in a library. Tell the story only because the people that were testifying that he showed to, they kind of showing us that. We don't want to see that book. But I really tell you the story because the author of the book apparently got phone calls and congratulated for the you with some marketing. You got happened through this, and the I'm sorry. How about that? Okay. Is it? How is that? All right. I hope I don't have to start all over again. I just was saying that I was watching a U.S. Congress hearing where. How about that? All right. So they were showing genderqueer. I had never looked at it. I was pretty taken back by the picture he was showing. The people he was showing it to said, please stop showing us that. And I tell the story not so much for that as the author of the book actually was contacted by people saying, wow, this was awesome. You got some notoriety. You got some marketing. And the author said, actually, I wrote that book from my parents. It's not a book for kids. So I think this is going to be a conversation that goes on. As I've looked around the state, and I work in government, I work up in Augusta, and some school districts are looking at this, and I'm hearing on one side we got to ban books. I don't want to ban books. And on the other hand, hey, we should have every book out. And I think some school districts are looking at more creative ways that perhaps we could look at this issue. And finally, I'll just say, and I'm assuming this will be a conversation for another day, but I'm privy to understand a representative from Southern Maine who, did that go too? There it goes. I don't know what I'm doing. There's a representative from Southern Maine who I actually don't tend to agree with politically, is actually going to put in a pornography bill in the next session in January. And I don't know much more about it than that. I know I'll be probably helping to support it. And finally, I actually bring this all up because today I saw a Heritage Foundation study that just really went to the roots of what pornography does to anybody's mind, but certainly to young kids' minds. So I hope that we really, as a board, just continue to talk about this. And if we're really talking about the kids, it just really can't be done now. We've got to work on this more.
Anybody else?
Is this okay? On the topic of bus safety, I just have to give my daughter's bus driver a shout out, Diane, for going the extra mile the other day to ensure that my daughter got home safely. Although it was totally fine, but she went an extra step to have them contact me and be sure everything was kosher. And I thought that was pretty cool, and really thankful for her vigilance and her observation and awareness and just trusting her gut to reach out when things didn't seem normal to her, and thankful that all of our bus drivers are keeping their passengers safe. Thanks to them and their team, and I reached out to her too to thank her because it was super awesome and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So I agree with comments that Mike was just making, just about keeping our minds open. And the way that my understanding is the school board does that is we continue to look at our policies and look at how we can innovate the issues that affect our students in the district. So I appreciate those comments. Sure, I love the prompt for the update for transportation. My kiddos were one of the ones where we had a blow through a few weeks ago on the crossing side. So eager to hear how we can continue to focus on that. I wanted to just say a couple things to the team. The build committee has done a lot of work around this project, as we all know, but I just want to encourage all the board members, if you've not been on that committee, we all are on our own committees, but it would be great to just ask you to invest some time into the resources that the build committee is putting out right now regarding the builds. Just want to make sure that we're fully engaged and aware of the efforts, and to, I think what I'm trying to say is spread the word around what our #1 agenda, in my opinion, should be between now and the election. I've spoken with as many people as I've bumped into, which isn't a ton. And I have yet to run into somebody who actually knows what they're supposed to be voting on in November, and that's concerning to me. The information is starting to come out from that team. Our architect team has done a terrific job. The piece that went out on Parent Square yesterday with that green graphic that shows the state funding, so that hopefully our parents, guardians, and community members can see how much of that building is being state funded, was terrific. The Zoom meetings, just making sure each person that we bump into, but everyone we're connected to, every group that we're connected to, as well as all the groups that they're connected to, that we're continuing to encourage people to understand that when they go to the ballot in Raymond, there's just one question: do you want to receive this funding, yes or no, from the state? And conversely, in Windham, it's a separate ballot altogether, so it won't be, with all the rest of the questions. A lot going on, obviously, with elections and other concerns. We've heard some comments tonight, but as a board, we don't have that many days to make sure that everybody that shows up to that ballot box, let's get them out in Raymond. It's the only question, right? I mean, this is the only thing being asked. And even though there's a lot of emotion still, I'm finding, about decisions that have passed, and the train's kind of left the station on those, but to acknowledge them, but also say, hey, you're voting to receive this, to innovate into both communities. The other thing is, I was wondering if we can, Chris, I'm not sure if it's Thursday's the best time, but to provide a little more clarity on what the alternate would be in terms of the concept of having to renovate the schools as they exist today. We've talked a lot about that in the build committee, but just the soft touch. And when I suggested that to the people I have talked to, they're sort of like, oh, okay, I get that. I see that. It's not about just building a new school or asking for local funding. It's more about accepting resources so that we don't have to pay for them and get, two buildings that aren't as good as they could be, if that makes sense. And that's all I had for tonight.
No, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because I had a spare half hour this afternoon. I don't know what I did with the sheets, but I found Don Davis's old construction folder and was just peering through minutes, and that exact same thing. And this is actually back to 2014-15, where the RSU 14 board at that time was trying to figure out, and they were at 3 options, which was to build a consolidated middle school. And at that time, it was all locally funded. The projected cost was $80 million, all locally funded. To renovate Jordan Small and build a new Windham Middle School at a little over $30 million for that, and then build a new consolidated school at that point on the Windham campus. So really that choice of $30 million in 2014 money or $80 million in 2014 money. And so it was just interesting that this conversation has been going on. That's almost 10 years ago that committee was then working to try to determine. And at that point it was, do we put in an application, do we not put an application to try to go on our own? And then 9 years later, to be a month away from, yes, a $39.8 million, but $39.8 in 2014 dollars would have been probably close to $100 million. So, it's just it's different what we're having a chance to take a look at, but as far as the impact to the community for being able to leverage a tremendous amount of funds is a great thing for us. But it's a conversation that's been going on with this board for a long, long time.
Anybody else? No? Oh. Oh, I didn't know whether, okay.
Hi everyone. For those who don't know, I'm a senior at Windham High School this year, and I've lived in Windham my whole life. As Mr. Howell stated earlier, Spirit Week was amazing. Today was Pink Day, and it was kind of funny to see some of the teachers wear hot pink, I'll say, but I think everyone participated. It was great. Tomorrow will be the pep rally, and I think students are also going to be excited for leaving early tomorrow. Sorry to the teachers, but I just want to say that coming up these few months, the Civil Rights team is making a mural in the closed caf, and I think this will also kind of help with the bullying situation. The Civil Rights team is making an eagle on like this huge plain wall, and it's gonna be like stating the Windham Eagles welcomes people of all religions, backgrounds, etc. And I think this will be a good reminder for people just to kind of just be kind to everyone, and I think it will improve the morale in the school. So just want to let you guys know that.
Thank you. We're going to move on to committee reports, starting with finance. Shar?
Yeah, so we've, a couple weeks ago, I met with staff regarding finance to get the ins and outs and ask a bunch of questions. And then on the 14th, we had an official finance meeting, the first one of the school year, and we recapped the meeting that we had the week before to the rest of the finance group. And pretty much took up the whole time that we had allotted just to go through the recap of what we had talked about the previous week. So I'm looking forward to working with staff this year on the budget. A couple of things, overarching themes that we talked about was to provide more detail in the cost center descriptions. So when a member of the public, or for that matter, a member of the board, is looking at the proposed budget, we have some sort of idea what it is beyond just the short little synopsis that people that don't work with it every day don't understand. The other thing is to take a look at revenues. What do we currently do for revenues? What else could we be doing for revenues to help offset the tax lien for the community members? And also looking at expenses. We do a lot to buy things in bulk to reduce cost and things like that. But I really would like to put the challenge out there to staff that they look for further opportunities for cost savings across all the schools. And anything that we can do to lower the tax burden would be great. Thank you.
Okay, facilities. March, did you meet? No? Policy met last week. We spent a bit of time finalizing a lot of technology policies, which are on the agenda this evening. Christine Frost-Burtonay, Bob Hickey, and Jody also have been working with the technology committee internally, and they reviewed these policies as well. Our process is, as always, to compare MSMA policies with Drummond and Woodsum. Obviously, anything that's required, we scrutinize carefully. Some of these policies are currently on our books, and as you probably saw in your packet, there's a lot of yellow on these things. So we really made some revisions, and those are very obvious if you look at the packet. And so without further ado, I'm going to move on to curriculum, and later on we'll be talking about these policies.
Okay, so the curriculum committee heard from guidance staff pre-K through 12, and each shared their curriculum guides or maps for the upcoming year. Links to each of these guides can be found on the agenda, minutes, and curriculum site on the RSU 14 page. I do recommend going and seeing that because I know we did talk a lot about how SEL is in each grade, as well as what guidance means for each different grade as well. So our next meeting is October 16th, and the committee will welcome K through 1 staff.
Great. Any update on technology, Jody? No? Adult ed?
Adult ed. I will be sending this to board members in the morning, but we have some really good updates from adult ed. For the summer update, just so people know what was going on, they registered 419 for classes through the beginning of September at nearly $23,000. This included students from Windham, Raymond, Gorham, Westbrook, Standish, and Gray. There are 13 in a UGOT class certificate program. RSU 14 nets 50% of the nearly $500 that is brought in for that. There are also collaborations with the Finance Authority of Maine and New Ventures of Maine offering free classes. There will be an trip to Iceland in June of 2024. 23 people have already expressed interest. Details will be confirmed later this fall. They did an event called, they did a book drive for Adult Education and Family Literacy Week of the week of September 18th through 2nd. They collected over 500 books, and there were donation locations at the Adult Ed Center here in Windham, the Windham Public Library, and at Raymond Elementary School. Next. The fall 2023 catalog goes out to all people in Windham and Raymond. It was glossy printed, not a newsprint this year. It was in color and it was wonderful. There is a great substitute teacher training happening. 8 students had already registered, and they'll be partaking in that. They may have had some more since then. Mentioned that already. There has been an addition to the pottery program, and it's been well received. They're going to be having 4 sessions this fall, and all are mostly full. There is a watercolor class that has seen great success already. Already talked about a trip. Oh, actually, there's a couple more trips scheduled for this over the winter. One for New York City in December, and another in February to Quebec. There are some great physical exercise activity classes and independent programs going on. The walking here at Windham High School, there are already 33 people registered. There are a couple other exercise classes. Next page. At our meeting, Director Tom Nash shared that the longest tenured teacher through Windham Adult Ed had passed away a few weeks ago. She had taught exercise classes for nearly 30 years, and it was definitely a loss. There were some construction projects that fixed ventilation in the Adult Ed building, and so things are hopefully going to be much better. Talked about that. Sue Colley thanked Marge Gavoni for her efforts in establishing a new American Sign Language course. If anybody else has ideas, please make sure you pass them along. Talked about that. They're working on the schedule for January through June. Any ideas sent as soon as possible, along with a potential teacher. They do share some concerns and challenges about getting larger spaces for some classes. And one thing that we talked about at our meeting is to go back and look at how the priority is done when it comes to securing spaces for internal groups versus external groups. So that can be hopefully updated, and adult ed would be able to get access to spaces a little more easily. They found it difficult and challenging at times. And typically they don't have a long window to know whether a course is going to run or not. So that is a little bit of a concern. Other things, they are definitely looking at and talking with both the Wyndham Library and Wyndham Parks and Recs to see about joint programming. Regional transportation to bring adult students to the campus, Town Hall, and Wyndham Public Library is also being explored through the Age-Friendly Committee. And as I said, I will send all of this info with more details out tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody? And we've heard from you. Okay. Let's move on to the report of the secretary. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the minutes of the September 6, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Any board discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And another.
I move to approve the minutes of the September 19th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Board discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item number 10, a motion.
Okay. I move that the warrant and notice of election for the Regional School Unit number 14 presented to the meeting be approved, and that a referendum election for the RSU be called for November 7th, 2023, for the purpose of approving the issuance of bonds or notes of the RSU for school construction project purposes as described therein.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment? Board discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item number 11, RSU 14 public hearing. A motion, please.
I move that the notice of public hearing presented to the meeting be approved, and that a public hearing on the issuance of bonds or notes for school construction project proposed be held on October 18th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. as provided therein.
Any public comment?
That was a second.
Board discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We're moving into policies. Let's start with IJND.
I move to approve the first revised reading of policy INJD, RSU 14 website and social media.
Second.
Any public comment? Board discussion?
So this was one of several tech policies that the committee looked at. This one was last opened in 2010, so it was a little bit dated, but mostly what was changed is the addition of social media. So all of the policies applied not just to our website, but to social media. We do have a small social media presence in the district. But that was most of the changes, was just updating that. And then, if I may, for the second one, even though we're not there yet, the next policy is the regulation, which kind of defined the procedures surrounding this one, just ground rules about who puts things on the website, who can post to our social media, making sure that we're maintaining student and staff confidentiality, and limits on just what kind of things are posted.
Any further comment from the board? All those in favor? Opposed? I just want to add that the folks that are reading these motions are on the policy committee. Up next, we are on to IJNDB.
I move to approve the first reading of policy INJDR.
Oh, right, sorry, yes.
RSU 14 website and social media guidelines.
Thank you. I have a first and second. Any public comment? Board discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Now we'll go into IJ and DB.
I move to approve the first revised reading of policy IJNDB, student use of school-issued computer devices and the internet.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment? Board discussion?
So I'll just do a quick rundown, if that's okay. This policy is rooted primarily in, firstly, as Kate stated, we looked at legal references as well as MSBA for this one, and that process is really just checking our policy from 2010 and then going back through and seeing what the differences are, highlighting those, making comments just from that scholastic perspective, and then going back and looking at the content. As far as this one, it's really rooted in the Children's Internet Protection Act. There's 3 crosses on the bottom that are not new for this policy, but it gives you a sense if you wanted to take a look at those for the second revised. Essentially, it looks at this Protection Act and that it's really to address concerns around children's access to material on the internet and what the school board's obligation is in writing policy and how those devices are used for students that use those devices to access the internet, essentially. So a couple additions. I'll just highlight. It's in yellow. It's very clear, but I'll just give you a couple highlights. There's an addition of a reference right at the beginning to third-party services. There's a few referenced, such as G Suite for education and Zoom, etc. It's not limited to those. There's many other applications that we have third-party agreements with, but that's an important add for this one. We also added that students are not allowed to access the RSU-14 network when using their privately owned computers and devices. This would be consistent with employee guidelines as well in another policy. In addition of electronic communications being closely monitored to prevent unlawful disclosure from the school's side, and then providing some language on background on education of students around online behavior, what our responsibility for that is as a school district, and then some direction and language around the superintendent or their designee's responsibility is that they shall be responsible for integrating age-appropriate internet safety training and digital citizenship.
Any further comment from the board? Yep.
I just had a question. In the first paragraph, the last 2 sentences, the first one says, students are not allowed to access RSU-14 network when using privately owned computers or devices. And then the following sentences says, the use of a privately owned device must comply with all district policies or may be confiscated. Can somebody provide some clarity, because that doesn't make sense. One sentence says you can't do it, and then the next sentence says they have to be compliant.
So the part that says you can't do it is that we're under no obligation to put your privately owned device on the regular production network. However, there is a guest network, and if you're on the guest network and you're violating policies, then it would give us the ability to address that.
You said, Chair? Okay. Any others? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Another motion, please.
I move to approve the first revised reading of policy IJNDBR, student use of school-issued computer devices and the internet rules.
Second. Thank you. Public comment? Board discussion?
I would be loath to go through all the yellow in this one. Essentially, having highlighted the basis for the policy, this is a regulation that we would use clearly to implement how we use this policy. Many of the changes are similar. I would just highlight the middle of the first page talking about consequences for violation. This is concurrent in other policies, so some of this language just shores up that this prohibited use concept and what consequences would come has been added to this policy in terms of the regulation piece. Some language around third-party provider terms of service, as well as downloading apps, and for the most part, just some cleaning up language, parents, guardians, and editing
There is one piece on the 3rd page around the school may confiscate or disallow use of privately owned devices used by a student in school without authorization, and the contents of the computer may be searched in accordance to applicable laws and policies, and that's also consistent with some language that we've got in other policies around what consequences for prohibited use would be. And then finally at the end, Google Suite for Education. This language is required based on the Google Suite and how we use it in the district.
Any comment from the board? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to GBCC.
I move to approve the first revised reading of policy GBCC, employee use of privately owned cell phones and other electronic devices.
Second.
Any public comment? Board discussion?
So the last time this was looked at was in 2012. There are a couple added references because they are newer policies, I think, or adjusted policies. The name is different because now it's including the privately owned cell phones of employees, which we compared to, I believe, both MSMA and Drummond and Woodsum. So it basically adds privately owned devices of employees, and then also contact with students on those devices. I think that's it.
Any board discussion? Sure.
At what time would an employee be using their personal is this just for phone calls and stuff, or is it that they would use it to share videos like during class, or is it just their personal use?
I think, Caitlin, it actually covers most everything. So number one, there isn't a reason for a staff member to be contacting students with a personal cell phone. So that particular component's there. It's also covered in here if an employee were to violate district policy with their cell phone. And the other piece that's in here is that it recognizes that there's times for staff when they do need to access their phone, an emergency happens or something like that, and for just staff to use their best judgment for when it's appropriate to do that. But really, we provide district devices, and so really if instruction's taking place, it really should be happening with a district device and not a personal phone.
You all set? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. GCSA.
You're on. I move to approve the first reading of policy GCSA, employee use of school-issued computers, devices, and the internet.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment. Board discussion.
Okay, so, sorry, that's me. I was somewhere else in my mind for a second. I apologize. So this is a policy that reviews clearly how our employees use school-issued computers. Speak for myself, when we originally opened these policies, they all sounded like they were the same to me in some way or another. But the work through the tech team, as far as running them through the technology committee, getting that feedback, and then digesting them one at a time. We started these a year ago, so we've spent our time on them and made sure that they're up to date. And so I just want to mention that. So again, it is how our employees use their school-issued computers, devices, and the internet, and this wouldn't be appropriate or apply to all staff, obviously. These are crossed against MSMA and Drummond Woodsum as appropriate for suggested language. In this one, we've got a couple of additions at the top related to the Google Suite and Zoom as referenced. And then I'll just point out that there was an omission for filtering technology because it's implied the way that our network is set up that everything is filtered and that we have prohibited use and a policy that establishes what is expected of students using their devices. So it was not recommended that remained in the policy. And then the crosses that are there's a copyright, you'll note that copyright compliance is a new policy that we're going to be adding, and then a couple of crosses. And the reason we added those crosses was to make the policies consistent with each other. So we went through each policy, checked to see what the content was once they were finalized, checked which policies needed to be crossed, and then put them in each policy. So that's the long and the short of that one.
Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Last but not least, EGAT.
Do we have a regulation, Ms. Brooks? On number 7? Did I miss that?
Oh, it's at the very bottom. You are absolutely right.
Okay, if I'm all set, I move to approve the first reading of policy GCSA-R, employee computer and internet use rules.
Second.
Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. We have first, a second. Any public comment or discussion?
Okay, so for this one, clearly is a regulation to the policy we just reviewed. Again, went through tech policy committee with this one with a good number of comments in this one. So this seemed to be one in terms of how we interact with staff and how they use their devices. Our policy was lacking in terms of some areas of content. We updated the content that was required, and some of those include, as you'll see here, consequences for violations, updated language around acceptable use. We did add in, again, some specific language around personal use. So what that would look like if it was decided that a personal unit was going to be used on site, and what the specific circumstances of that would be. So there's a fair amount of language around that. And we did make the distinction of what is personal use. That seemed to be something that we spent a fair amount of time on. Personal devices, what was personal use, what was school issued. And so you'll see some clarification there. And then we did add the prohibited uses as well. There's a strikeout in 8 because it's a duplication. We felt that because we were drawing from 2 different sources in terms of editing this policy, that there was some redundancy, and so the strike through doesn't remove the content, it's just that it was worded differently in the policy.
Any questions from the board? I look over here, but okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Now, EGAD.
I move to approve the first reading of policy EGAD, copyright compliance.
Second.
Any public comment or discussion?
Okay, so we did not have this this policy or the regulation, so these are brand new. Is your basic copyright rules, basically, according to the Teach Act of 2002. So we were supposed to make sure that it's posted, that all the copyright notices, so you don't infringe on that. And then the regulation is what happens, pretty much the procedure with that.
Right, this is entirely new. Thank you. Any comment from the board? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
I move to approve the first reading of the policy EGADR, copyright compliance administrative procedure.
Second.
Public comment or discussion? I think you've covered it in your explanation. All those in favor? Thank you. Opposed? Okay. Tricky.
Okay. Just as a point of interest for the public so that they're aware, how do all of these updates get out to staff? Mr. Howell.
Once once these actually pass, we'll schedule some time with the administrative team to go over the changes that are there and to make sure that they make it out to staff. In addition, we did have a chance to meet with the association specifically on the staff ones and had a chance to discuss through what some of the changes are. Was interesting even reading through most of these. In fact, I think some of the original language might even had pagers and some of the technology where so much has changed in the last 13 years. But as we've all discussed, what's actually in here is just kind of good common sense, but really kind of helps clarify how we use technology and then how we support technology, and should something not happen correctly with technology, how do we address it?
Thank you.
We all set? Move on? Okay. Item 13, Maine School Boards Association Constitution and Bylaws. The board will discuss the Maine School Board Association's proposed deletions, revisions, and additions to their constitution and bylaws. And we are fortunate to have Jessica be our representative, and I'm going to let her do a little explaining about this, please.
Okay, so I went to the York regional meeting, because that's the one I could make. And we went through the resolutions, I think, at one of our last meetings. And they apparently forgot to send us the constitution changes, but we talked about them. So it looks like there's a lot of changes, but as they said, somebody was very bored and had a lot of time on their hands, so they went through and did a lot of editing to make it so it's actually readable. So mostly they're editorial changes. Article 7 is the only big change to wording to define the roles and responsibilities of each active committee in the MSBA. And that's pretty much it. So, I mean, it seems like a lot of changes, but it's just explaining what each committee's role is and who is going to be serving on them.
And by having a motion for this, we are giving you direction when you go represent us. Thank you. Any comment from the public on this? It was in the packet. Any board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
I move to support the proposed recommendations to the Constitution and bylaws at the annual October meeting.
Second. Thank you. I see no action as far as discussion. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item number 14, RSU 14 Emergency Operations Plan for 2023-2024. I just want to say that the district takes the safety of our students and our staff very seriously, and we have a very, very in-depth committee that really takes a deep dive on a very regular basis, reviews all the safety plans. Christine Frostburton heads that along with others, and I'd actually, if you would introduce the people.
Sure, we have a number of the safety team members here tonight. I believe Officer Hudner is here. If he's not, he's on the team. We have 3 school resource officers, Rob Hamilton, Officer Hamilton, and Lee Marr, who's out right now because they have a new baby at home. But they come to safety team meetings regularly. We also have Mike Duffy, who's in the back, Bill Hansen, Facilities Director, Bob Hickey, Technology Director, and I think that's everyone. So if you folks want to come on down, we'll start with our initial overview before we head into the next part of the discussion.
Good evening, I'm Bill Hansen, Facilities Director. I'm going to go over a really brief overview of the plan, and then we'll go into executive session, and then there'll be a deeper dive. The plan is confidential to the district, so we don't share it outside of those who would need to know. So this is a requirement of the DOE that we have an annual review of this plan. Now, I'll tell you, we review it much more often than that, but there's an official school board review of it once a year required. Because of the information in the plan, it is required that we go with specifics in executive session. So, key highlights. RSU 14 is very fortunate. We work very closely with our local law enforcement and also our public safety leaders, school security experts to develop this plan. This isn't a plan that comes from a book. It's a plan that is a living document that we work on, edit, and change as we learn new things. It's really important. Another key thing about the plan is we have one plan as a district. The high school doesn't have a different plan than the primary school and the middle school. It is one plan which is consistent across the entire district. Each school has a plan, has portions of the plan that might be specific to that building due to the layout or what they do, but the general plan is the same for the district. So a child that starts in the primary school and comes to the high school will receive the same information, the same plan, the same actions all the way through. The safety team does meet on a regular basis to update the plan. We monitor the school drills. We provide feedback on the drills and key learnings that we can do to improve. So that's really important, right? We have a plan, but we actually work the plan. Each year we send our SROs and usually an administrator to the National Association of School Resource Officers Conference, where they discuss the latest trends, the initiatives and concerns around school safety. So that's really important to keep us on the leading edge of what's going on and what our best practice is, because that's a changing thing. It's a new thing all the time. And then finally, I'm going to mention the plan is comprehensive, so it covers emergency situations such as evacuation, fire, shelter in place, lockdown, severe weather, hazardous materials, medical emergencies, reunifications, and active shooter. So it's not just one thing, it's a comprehensive plan that looks at all these different crises and how we would react to it with the facilities and the staff that we have. So that's really the introduction, and again, after an executive session, we can get into more details of the plan. Do you have any questions before we do that?
That's it for the general overview, but we're happy to take questions, and we have a lot more information we'll share in executive session.
Is there anything on our website regarding emergency plans?
Sure. We have certainly the standard response protocol. That is what we follow in all of our schools regarding lockdowns and protocols for people to follow. That's also seen in all the classrooms with a poster, so that visual's out there and front-facing. Regarding the comprehensive plan, that's not on the site because of the importance of keeping that very confidential. And I think that really it's the SRP that you'll see on the website. Standard response protocol.
Could you also speak to, I know staff are aware through their administrators this plan, volunteers and substitutes and how that works?
Yes, so every classroom should have a red folder or red binder that has a copy of the SRP, the Standard Response Protocol. It has specific information about where to go in an evacuation, what to do during drills, important contact information, so every space should have that. And volunteers, I know that Lori Fabrizio Bowen, who onboards substitutes, and other individuals, make sure they're aware of the safety plan so they know where to go to look for that red folder or binder. And that helps everyone stay on the same page.
And also, when you have a drill, it's my understanding then you do have a table. You all sit around the table and process what went well and what didn't go well. Is that correct?
So, correct. We meet weekly, and sometimes more often if needed. We debrief drills, how they went. At times we go to schools and we watch how the school is conducting the drill, and we look for certain things that need to be happening, and we give feedback to the administrator so that they can share that with their team. That really helps to facilitate drills. We also give staff at the beginning of the year district safety expectations. It's a bulleted list of the essential safety practices we must see in action at all times. Things like always wearing your badge. We want students and staff to all be looking for a badge so we know that this is an approved person to be in the building. Never keeping a door open, as we've seen in national news. That is a real area of concern. And other things that are baseline expectations. So we go and do visits at schools and we take a look at those practices to make sure they're in place, and then we give feedback to the principal so they can follow up with the entire staff.
Just also add to that the school resource officers and members of the safety team are also visiting schools for faculty meetings and such, and doing annual updates as far as any changes that may have happened within safety protocols, and just making sure that staff have their questions answered, because we want to make sure that if there is an emergency, number one, people know where to go for the information, but then also we're doing all that we can to keep students safe throughout the day, and just general practices that we do across the district.
It's my understanding that our safety plan is acknowledged beyond the district because it's so great. And it's so great because we have staff members and leaders in the district that really fine-tune, scrutinize all the areas that we need to look at to make sure our staff and students are safe. And I, for one, am very grateful that it's a consistent process constantly. It's a live document, as Mr. Hansen said, and it's pretty darn good. So thank you.
I just want to add one other thing, which is also, every time I have a chance to interact with our school resource officers, they take student safety and staff safety personally. They own their buildings, they own our district, and they are vigilant, and vigilant being not only during school hours, but outside of school hours, that as things happen, or events, or things that we need to be aware of, that they're making sure that we have that information that we need. So it's not, our school personnel do an absolutely wonderful job, but definitely our law enforcement partners, all the way up to the chief and the sheriff's department with Sheriff Joyce, do an outstanding job of keeping us connected, making sure that we have the information that we need. But again, the resource officers that we have and former resource officers that are in the room take our personal safety and our staff safety and our student safety very, very seriously, and they're constantly looking for ways that they can improve what we do in the district.
Absolutely, it is quite the partnership. I wanted to also add that we have been meeting with staff. So this year, in the fall, shortly after school started, we had representatives from nutrition, support staff, teachers, from different buildings, different grade levels, meet with the safety team. We reviewed the plan with them and really wanted to get their feedback so we could think about, you know, we see what we see when we walk through buildings, and we talk to administrators regularly about safety protocols, but how are they experiencing it in their varied roles within the school? That feedback's critical for us to think about the operational side and the consistency and messaging and what we need to do better to make sure we're all operating with safety at the forefront of our minds. So their feedback has been outstanding, and I just wanted to acknowledge the staff who participate in that work.
Look at this. And my final comment is, I think sometimes parents question during recess when folks are outside of the building, and my understanding is that walkie-talkies are in use. Could you?
Officer Fournier likes me to call those radios. I used to call them walkie-talkies, Ms. Briggs. Yes, we have many radios around the district for staff. Whenever they leave the building, they should be using a radio, communicating with the main office that they're taking their class on a walk to the frog pond if you're up in Raymond. But the radios are really important. So they have protocols they follow to make sure they're using them appropriately and using them when they're leaving the immediate building.
And my final, I think it's my final, bus safety and communication and a plan for that.
Yes, in terms of working on a plan with the transportation department.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's another area looking at not just during the school day and what we're doing for drills, but also the transportation department plans and practices with students how to, what to do in the event of an emergency and practice bus safety at the beginning of the school year.
Thank you. Any questions to my right? No? It's really great to see you guys sitting down there and not talking, and specifically someone. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate all your work. It's really important, and I know you take it seriously, so thank you very much. And thank you to our law enforcement. We couldn't do this without you, so we were very appreciative of your work. Thank you. As described, we're now going to go into executive session where we will take a deeper dive, but of course that's confidential, so may I have a motion for that?
I move to enter into executive session to discuss the RSU 14 emergency operations plan and not return to regular meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. See you next time.